I'm not, she, they. I'm like Robin,
Names are really, they were just randomly picked to be gendered.
Even if it is a phase, so what?
I recently came across this TikTok and they were talking about how they still identify as a Black woman, even though they use they, them pronouns, because they were raised historically as a Black woman. And it still comes with like even though you identify as non-binary or gender fluid, you still have that like stigma and that struggle that Black women went through, because that's how you were raised and that's how you grew up. And that's how you kind of not like present yourself, because like, I feel like presenting yourself is like, you choose to present yourself a certain way and you can't choose to present Black. So it's just how you are. And like, there's a lot of like stigma and stereotypes and pride and happiness that comes with being a Black woman. And even though that's not who you are at this moment, it was who you were at some point and who you like kind of identify with up to a certain point. And you can't, even though it's not a part of you anymore, it's still like something that was a part of you at some point and something that you can't really get rid of, just like the Blackness specifically, not even just the Black woman, but like Black women have a whole different subset of discrimination set up against them. But yeah, I definitely resonated with that. I was like, yeah, even though I don't really identify as a woman that much anymore, I still definitely see the merits and see the identification of me being a Black woman, because it's how I present a lot of the time. And it's just who I am as a person, and I am Black and I was a woman at some point. So like, it's just a part of who I am, even if it's not what I want at the forefront.
Robin, I really appreciate that you brought up how race and gender like intersect and how those identities work together, like in somebody that you saw on the internet and also for you. Would either of you be interested in talking more about how race intersects with your identity or class or anything else? Kimberly Crenshaw mentions intersectionality, or coined the term intersectionality, to talk about when different identities overlap and intersect, they create like whole new issues that, white woman might not face this issue and a Black man might not face this issue, but a Black woman faces this issue. And so she discusses that. And I just wanted to bring that up because we can talk about that in terms of like race, class, and also things like sexuality, like how being gender fluid, people will always assume that you have a certain sexuality. And, I just wanted to see what you think about that and see what it means to you to have intersecting identities.
Yeah, I can definitely talk about that a bit. So I identify as a lesbian for my sexuality, and a lot of people assume that that means a woman who loves a woman. And I feel like being a lesbian, that term is so much more broader than that, because there are he, him lesbians, they, them lesbians. There are so many different kinds of lesbians. And I feel like the term lesbian truly just means that you love women and the femininity, I feel like, for me at least. So like I know a few people who one of my friends, he's a trans man, but he identifies as a lesbian. And that's kind of sort of how I feel about my gender and my sexuality. So I'm gender fluid. So that, and being a lesbian for me means that I like people who are of the same sex as me, but also the same sex as me or gender as me, is very broad, obviously, because it's gender fluid. So yeah, I guess that's really the way that those intersect. It's definitely different than if I was cis and a lesbian.
Yeah, also gender fluid lesbian here. So we're really getting the whole spectrum right now. But
I'm not a lesbian.
Yeah, diversity. Yeah, but I definitely echo a lot of what Nicole says. I personally call myself a lesbian, but I am also attracted to non-binary people. And so it's like, people are just like, isn't it like just women? I'm like, yes, women are excelente, chef's kiss, of course. But like, I'm basically like, I usually say just women and non-binary / gender fluid people are my attraction, but like, it's basically anybody who's not a cis man, to be honest with you. And like, a lot of people would like say that's like, oh, that's definitely like pansexual. But like, I used to identify as pansexual, but I'm just like, I can't even put my finger on it. Like, I'm just simply not rocking with it. Like, I feel like the idea of pansexuality, like historically and like socially, is like, it's just everybody, including men. And I'm like, no, stop right there. There's no attraction to man in any way, shape, or form within me. So I feel like lesbian has been a great term for me, even though it might not be the same for another person who identifies as lesbian, you know? And in terms of like intersectionality in general, I check a lot of boxes out here, you know? I'm Black, yeah, as you can see. And I am a woman sometimes, so there's that. I am queer, there's that. I am physically disabled, there's that. And I am mentally disabled, so I am the ultimate minority, guys. So I've got so much going on in here, bruh. And like, definitely what you were echoing about, like, it creates like a whole new identity. I feel like that's kind of why like it doesn't matter as much to me as like how I am like perceived, because I'm just like, I'm not, you know, she, they, I'm like Robin, you know, like I'm just like, I'm the Black gay woman, disabled and physically and mentally, and like theater and poetry and Dungeons and Dragons and stand-up performance and The Color Purple, the musical and The Color literally. So like, it's just like, I guess with me being such a minority in so many different ways, in a way has like made it easier for me to be perceived, because I'm like, I'm like so varied in different ways that like you can't even just pinpoint one thing. I've been very much loud and proud since I got here. Like I was on the down low, like in high school, like they knew, but like I wasn't like talking about it. But like now I'm here, I'm like, yeah, I'm gay. Let everybody you know. Spread the word. It's also because I'm single, yeah, but definitely intersectionality has like, it seems like that it would like be harder, which it can be in a lot of aspects, you know, like largely the Black community is not, like especially the older generation is not very well versed or supportive of the LGBTQ plus community, especially where I come, well, not where I come, well, yes, but like where my parents come from. I was born here. My parents were born in Jamaica, and my grandparents as well. So
here being
like,
the United States.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if you meant like we're in Robin and I are both in New York right now, and so I wasn't sure if you meant like New York or the States or.
Yes, so I was born in the United States in New York. Yeah, people in Jamaica are historically pretty homophobic. It's not a very accepting place at all. So like, even though I'm so into and so loving of my culture and where my ancestors have come from, it's like, if you have to put a part of yourself away in order to enjoy another part of yourself, like that's so not it. Like it's so uncomfortable. Like I haven't been to Jamaica in a while. I haven't been to Jamaica since I came out as both a lesbian and gender fluid. So like I don't really know how it would be over there for me at this time, but I can just tell that it wouldn't be a good time, especially since like it's the place of my older relatives. There's like all of my younger relatives were born in the United States and grew up here. So there's like a whole different ballgame. But like all of my older relatives who live in Jamaica, like the last time I was there, like I like they don't say it, but like you kind of like can feel it, you know, like it's like you just know kind of how they would say these things and react to these things because they can be really judgmental about this stuff. So I'm kind of curious about how it would be if I went to Jamaica as the person I am today, because I haven't been there in so long. But like chances are I would just be like, yup, still a woman all the time, 100% of the time, and straight, so looking for a man. Men are great, and I would like one. That's probably how it would be, which is so unfortunate because like you want to be all of yourself all the time, but like it's like I guess I got to sacrifice being queer to enjoy my favorite Jamaican dishes and to be in my homeland. So it definitely is difficult in the broad aspect of the real world, but like here at Vassar and here specifically for my next 4 years, it's been really cool having all of these different identities and making this person that is me, who is so multifaceted and so spicy and different and unique and lovely. So I guess it just depends on the situation, but like here it's good. Outside, I got 4 years to figure that out. We got time, but I definitely will need to figure that out at some point.
Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, I completely agree with a lot of what you just said. I'm actually Polish, so the crisis, there's like a big crisis on like homosexuality and just like the queer community in Poland. And yeah, they're not very accepting. There's a lot of hate crimes happening right now in Poland. So that's scary. But I mean, I've been to Poland as a lesbian, but I haven't been to Poland as gender fluid. And a lot of my family does know that I'm lesbian in Poland and are pretty accepting of it, but it's just not everyone yet. But hoping to change that. That's kind of sort of why I wanted to go into journalism, was to create that impact and be able to change the world one step at a time.
What does transitioning mean to you?
Okay, so transitioning for me, I kind of don't even want to think about it as transitioning because I feel like I've always felt the same way about my gender. So it's just more of like realigning my gender expression and the people around me with my gender. But that's definitely been an experience for me because I came out as non-binary in like 8th or 9th grade, and fully went by they them. And I think that was like the beginning of my journey as like transitioning. And I like cut my hair, wore a binder, like I was like fully like non-binary. And then as like high school went on, it kind of changed a lot. Like I stopped using those pronouns. I went back to she, her. And a lot of it I feel like is just societal norms and the pressure that forms around me, because I knew that I wasn't fully just they them. Like I knew there was a part of me that also identified with being a woman, and for myself figuring that out was hard because I've always just been like it's either this or that, and then I didn't realize that it could also be very fluid. So it took me a while to get there, and I feel like I'm still working on figuring out what my gender is, but for the most part, I feel like I've gotten pretty good at where I am and figuring it out. The biggest thing for me really is just pronouns and making sure that like you understand that like I'm definitely prefer they them the most. And then after that, like a lot of that is just a lot of messy like stuff that I'm still dealing with. But yeah, it's hard to be able to figure out what you're feeling inside and bring it out to the world and have everyone else understand it. So yeah.
I love that you mentioned you're still sort of figuring it out, because it's so important to me that people understand you don't need to have it all figured out to be valid. You can, still be figuring out your identity. You can, transition and detransition and retransition and do whatever you need to do to figure out your identity. And that doesn't invalidate transness or non-binariness or gender fluidity or anything like that. It's just people figuring it out. And, sometimes people will be like, oh, like my kid is acting trans, but I think it's just a phase. It's like, what if it is a phase? Like, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with people exploring and figuring out their identity? And, you know, it can be really hurtful when somebody says to us, like, oh, it's probably just a phase, because it's like, well, no, this is my identity. But even if it is a phase, so what?
Right. Being human is all about having all these different experiences. Like, I used to have a Monster High phase, and like when I was in my Monster High phase, my mom got me my Monster High dolls and everything, and she supported that. So like, is it that hard to support phases? Like, obviously I'm not into my Monster High phase. Well, no, that's a lie. I'm kind of still a little bit there, but it's definitely not as full blown as it was before. But like, it should just be like the same thing about like, you know, if you're how you're expressing your gender is a phase. Like, it doesn't matter how long or short lived it is. It's like, as long as you're supportive of it, it shouldn't really matter. Like, if it's a part of you and you identify with it at this time, then like, simple as that. Like, you know, like, support it, period. But like, in terms of transitioning, it's been so interessant. Like, Trans Day of Visibility just came up the other day. It was very recent. And for most of the day, I was like, yes, love trans people. They're my faves, everything, not really identifying with it. Then I was like, wait a damn minute. You use she, they pronouns now. That was not what was happening before. So technically, you are trans. And all the time that I've been identifying as gender fluid, I've never, not once, thought that I was trans in any way, shape, or form. Like, I was just like, we're just like, I'm still a woman, but we're like adding things onto it, you know? Like, so I was like, it's not really trans, you know? But like, I'm like, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking on some more. I definitely can see that for myself and like accept it for myself as well. Like, it's not like I didn't identify as trans. It's just like, I never really thought about it, you know? Transitioning in like a physical way has been very minimal for me. Like, I feel like being who I was as a person, being who I am as a person, has actually led me to using she, they pronouns versus like a feeling inside leading to she, they pronouns, which it has. But like, also like physically, like looking at me, like I've always thought that I've had kind of more of an androgynous looking face versus a more feminine looking face. And my voice is very like low-ish. So like that too. And like also just don't really have much happening in the chest area. Like, they're very small, very, very small. And I remember when I was younger, I was like, man, I wish I had big boobs, because I feel like I'm not a woman with these tiny ass titties that I have here. But then now I'm here and I'm like, wait, this is great. Now that I don't identify exclusively as a woman anymore, like not having like these breasts, you know, it's like actually very affirming to my they, them days specifically. So I know it's different for everyone. Like, I know people who have like the same size boobs as me, but like really want top surgery. And like, that's so fine and so valid. But for me, like, you can't even see them anyways. So like, it doesn't, I'm really chill with it. It doesn't matter to me, but like, I know it's different for everyone, but I felt that I didn't need to do anything. I feel like I guess it was made for me, you know. She, they was made for me, you know. I wasn't made for she, they, you know. But yeah, but although when I do be having my period, I'm like, you know, it'd be so great to not have a vagina at this time. But I think that's just, you know, the cramps in the pain. Like, otherwise, like, I'm rocking with it, you know. It's just there. It doesn't, I don't feel the strong desire to like, no, you know. But like, if you do, I'm living for it. I love that for you. And it's great.
I tend to think of transitioning in three terms. There's social transitioning, medical transitioning, and legal transitioning. So in terms of social transitioning, I transitioned between 7th and 8th grade. So I came out to myself in December of my 7th grade, and then started telling people in February of my 7th grade, and then just told more and more people, and was like fully out at school starting in 8th grade, and used a name that I felt more comfortable with. and started using they them pronouns, and I like chose a very, very masculine look for myself, like to the best of my ability. I had long hair, which I really enjoyed, but I cut it short because I wanted people to like see me and think, wow, that is not a girl. Then I legally transitioned this past summer. So I changed my legal name finally. My driver's license now has an X instead of an M or an F. And we, there's just starting to be some passports that have X instead of M or F. So I'm not one of the like first people to have that, but hopefully I will be soon once I get my passport updated, and that's all really exciting. And it feels really good to have a driver's license that has an X instead of an M or an F. That makes me really happy. And then to have my legal name be consistent with the name I go by is really, really nice. So that's sort of been my legal transition, but I've never tried to medically transition or physically transition. It's not something that I've done, and it's not something that I'm wanting to do right now. It may be that I do it at some point, but for me, that's not part of my transition. So I think of myself as having been transitioned for however many years it's been since 7th or 8th grade. And I don't think of my transition as incomplete until I like got the legal stuff or do some medical thing. For me, I transitioned in 7th and 8th grade and went from presenting as more feminine and more female to a more gender fluid and gender neutral look that worked for me, and expressing myself to the world that way. And that's when I transitioned.
Absolutely. Also made me think of more things about myself. Surprise. But like when you were talking about hair and names, that's also contributing to how I see myself as well. I am almost always seen in box braids because it's a protective style. It's a part of my culture, and it's like I've been doing since I was a child, like taking care of my hair texture naturally is simply mucho effort. And I like how braids look. So like I will get the braids, but like, people have this mindset. It's like, ooh, look at this girl with her braids. And I'm like, no, this is culture me, not gender me, guys. Like this is I just enjoy the culture and how I can celebrate being Black with how my hair texture is and how I can have these braids, because I'm telling you, bro, I know people think if these braids are not for everybody, but that's a whole separate conversation. I'm not going to get into it, but it's just really tethers me to my culture. And it's just something, even though I was wearing box braids when I identified as a woman, I can still wear box braids identifying as gender fluid. And it's just, I see it as more a cultural thing rather than a gender thing, even though I know a lot of the older Black community would disagree with me. And in terms of names, I was blessed and fortunate enough to have a name that is born with a name rather that is very unisex and could be for either gender. Like Robin is like, I've heard of boys named Robin, Robin Hood, you know what I'm saying? And then like girls named Robin. So I felt like the name also really encompasses who I am, because I'm not a female all the time, and I'm not non-binary or like not gendering all the time. So I feel like I was like really fortunate enough to like have a name that works both ways. I feel like there's a lot of power in a name, you know what I'm saying? Like, then I'm not saying that like, oh, this name defines you right here, but like it really helps with identity, especially if it's something that like society hasn't associated with like a certain gender for like years and years and years. I know it's different for everybody. And I would, if you're comfortable, Nicole, I'd love to hear about what you have to say in regards to your name as well, because like I know that like Nicole is like stereotypically a very feminine name. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. But for me, just like I'm saying, like I was made to not be cis, because look at this gender fluid name, look at this gender fluid frame, like come on now.
I do go by Nicole, and I just think that's one because it's easier. And I feel like everyone knows me by Nicole. So I'm just like, might as well. I'm comfortable with the name. And I don't really see it as a gendered thing because I feel like names are really, they were just randomly picked to be gendered. So I don't know. For me, it's like I've went by Nicole by like for my entire life. So I don't really have a problem with it. So yeah, and it's just easier too. So yeah.
Any last thoughts?
No, this was cool. Fun
Yeah.
times.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Yeah, of course.
for sure.
If you're watching this, I hope you check out other queer creators and other gender fluid creators to just see different perspectives. And I hope this allowed you to just see like 3 different perspectives on what it means for each of us to be gender fluid.